Hello, once again. Welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42, joined once again by Josh Shepardson at BChad50. And as always, as is the theme right now with Major League Baseball, we've got a huge slate of games for Friday and a ton of great options on the mound today. So I know you and I talking before the show, excited about trying to nail that perfect pitcher tonight.
Yeah, I mean, on a maximum slate, it's unbelievable. These Friday slates have been a blast, and we got aces galore. We've got really good starting pitcher number twos for teams. Like, there's just a ton of talent on the hill tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't need to expand too much on Felix Hernandez. He's got a great matchup against a team that can't hit righties. No one can hit Felix Hernandez, even when he's experiencing tightness. He goes for 12 Ks, so obvious top option on the board, not particularly close. Other options we've got here, if you're looking at GPPs, obviously, a guy I like quite a bit that no one's really going to be on is Andrew Cashner. He's been pitching really well, $8,800, got a nice strikeout rate. People will be off him because it is the Dodgers offense, but Ryan Vogelsong didn't have a whole hell of a lot of trouble with this team yesterday, so they are definitely beatable. Cashner, much better pitcher than Vogelsong, so I'm going to be targeting him in some tournaments.
I like that pick. Also, opposing Zach Greinke is going to drive his ownership down because you'd expect Greinke to have higher ownership. My tournament play of choice is going to be Garrett Cole at Arizona. He has done a great job of keeping the ball on the ground, huge strikeout rate, good walk rate, has the blazing heater, as we know, but backs it with a really good slider that's missing more bats this year. Curveball, changeup, like he has all the goods. The Diamondbacks offense isn't particularly scary, and Chase Field's home run issues shouldn't be an issue for Garrett Cole because he keeps the ball on the ground at such a high rate. So I really like Garrett Cole a lot tonight. Price point is right to fit some big bats on your lineup if you're going to roll out some GPP teams. But cash games, I'm with you. Felix or bust, basically. And then GPPs, it's Garrett Cole for me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, a couple other guys that we talked about we'll consider in GPPs. I like Shane Green. He's been pitching well. He did struggle against lefties last year, so it's a risk. But, I mean, the guy's averaging 15 fantasy points a game. He's getting wins because he's getting run support. Danny Salazar is either going to have it or not have it. Obviously, big strikeout guy on the other side. He's in play as well against Detroit. But more strikeout upside for him. Probably better play on DraftKings, $8,100. Yes. And, I mean, other guys, Garrett Richards, we know the stuff he had last year. He's got a good matchup against Texas tonight. So at $8,500, he's in a nice play as well. Anyone else you want to touch on before we go?
One more name I'll throw out there, Carlos Martinez of the Cardinals, $8,200, facing a dinged-up Brewers roster that is mostly right-handed. If he can navigate Adam Lind and keep his ground ball rate high as it has been, he doesn't have to worry about the homers at Miller Park. So love the strikeout upside. Biggest concern with Martinez is he does run up some pitch counts pretty quickly, so might not pitch deep into the game like you'd like, but he's been very good so far this year, and he's limited his walks at a pretty good club.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on here to catcher. There's some an obvious top option. You got Buster Posey if you want to pay for him. I personally will have a lot of Felix Hernandez, so will not be much Posey in my life tonight. Yadi Molina is a guy who's starting to heat up. He's got multi-hit games at 5 of his last 7. He's at 3K today against a aging Matt Garza, who has just not looked good this year. And I'm a big fan of Molina. I'm hoping he cracks that top 5 like we were talking before the show. But even in the 6 hole at $3,000, he's too good of a hitter in that matchup in this environment for 3K for me.
I completely agree. There's only a couple other names that I'm looking at personally, and I won't pay beyond that $3,000 for Molina. Not on a night where I think you really need to pay for one of those top pitching options if you're going to have a good night. Yasmani Grandal at $2,800. Switch hitter gets Andrew Cashner. Cashner keeps the ball on the ground. Petco Park, not where you necessarily want to grab hitters, but Grandal has a good line spot, has above average power, and I mean, if you want to get into narratives, he is playing against his old team, yada, 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 but like Grandal a little bit at $2,800. My favorite punt play tonight, and he's great pairing with King Felix because of that high salary, is $2,200 Kevin Plawecki of the Mets. I mean, he's the min salary, so you're getting some relief. And above average walk rates in the minors, has a little bit of power. He's playing at Yankee Stadium tonight, so he's going to get some nice park factors for homers. If he can put a charge into the ball, might reach the seats. Doesn't necessarily need to deliver on that $2,200 price tag. And most importantly, he gives you huge savings to spend on King Felix and some of the other pitchers tonight.
Yeah, and without a lot of great catcher options anyway, I think you and I both are the same thinking. That's the way to go. Pay down at catcher. save yourself salary for pitching and some big bats elsewhere. All right, moving on here to first base, where I know there's someone that you like, but I'll let you say it since I always say it. Who you like up top here, contrarian-wise?
Yeah, I don't want you to have to be a homer. I'll take that away from you. I'm going to go with Joey Votto against the lefty. There's going to be a lot of people that immediately check him off as a non-option because it's lefty-lefty. But Votto, fun fact, he has not hit an infield fly ball, according to Fangraphs, so a pop-up, in the last 3+ seasons against a left-handed pitcher. Over 400 plate appearances, 0 pop-ups. That is absolutely absurd. Line drive rate over 25%. Absolutely smokes lefties. Smokes righties and lefties, but people are going to dismiss him because it is the lefty-lefty matchup. Lester hasn't looked right this year. He's been messy. Yes, that BABIP is going to regress at some point, but a big part of that high BABIP is just him not being sharp this year. If you're not crisp, you're going to give up a lot of hits, and that's been the case. I wonder how much of that is due to him worrying about this pickoff nonsense, but I'll tell you what, Great American Ballpark is not a place to try and figure out your issues, and I like the idea of him and another bat that we'll touch on a little bit later, batting directly behind him, hooking them at Great American and looking for some tater chasing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. For all those reasons, I'm glad that someone else is on board here. But I mean, Joey Votto, as we all know, when he's locked in, one of the best hitters in the game. So when you can get him cheaper than anyone really at first base, and Goldschmidt 400 more, I mean, I like him a lot. Elsewhere at first base, you've got Anthony Rizzo against Mike Leake, who struggles against lefties. We already touched on the Great American Ballpark park factors. If you don't know that by now, learn it. I mean, there's a ton of runs, ton of power. Ton of home run upside at Great American. So Rizzo, great matchup against the guy that struggles against lefties. Love him. Encarnacion at $4,200 against Drew Smiley, who is tough on lefties, struggles against righties. Edwin mashes lefties. Do the math there. He's another great play up top there. And a cheap guy that I'm going to mention here, if he's got a nice lineup spot, he batted 5th, or I believe he batted 5th or 6th. I think it was 5th yesterday. $2,200 Darren Ruff. Had himself 2 doubles last night, or I should say yesterday afternoon. Today he gets Travis Wood, the lefty, who hasn't looked like himself. He was a high strikeout pitcher before. He's walking a lot of batters. He's not striking out a lot of guys. He's giving up contact. We've seen this before from Alex Wood, too. When he's bad, he's really bad. And a minimum salary first baseman, if you want to pay up some other places, I don't mind him at all.
And you're getting above average power there, so that's a good play. If you're looking in the sub $4,000 range, maybe a little bit pricier than that, I like Morneau at home. Big total at Coors again today. He's one of the left-handed bats that's going to get to face Heston, so I don't mind that price. Duda at Yankee Stadium, above average power, short porch in right field. Got to like that. I'm looking at Carlos Santana. If you're not using Shane Green, left-handed batter, hitting cleanup amongst many left-handed batters. So if the struggles with lefties rear their ugly head for Green today, Carlos Santana is going to be in a great spot to produce runs. And then Albert Pujols against the lefty, $3,500, really cheap price point. Wandy's back, and we like that as daily gamers.
Yes,
we'll pick on him a little bit. And then one more cheap name, $3,100 Adam Lynn. Good lineup spot with the Brewers, Miller Park, good home run park factor, good for runs scored. And I mean, you got to save someplace. We're going to keep harping on it all podcast. If you're paying for King Felix, you got to save someplace. And $3,100 awards you some savings and allows you to spend on a few other big bats with King Felix.
Yeah, one other guy I want to throw out there for tournaments. He's been absolutely on fire to start the season. Prince Fielder, if you're not using Garrett Richards, the guy's just absolutely locked in. He only has the 1 home run, but it did come 2 games ago, so he's got the power. He's just mashing the ball, hitting a ton of line drives. Obviously a pitcher's park there, but we know when Prince Fielder gets a hold of one, despite being a vegan, he's got an insane amount of power somehow while never eating meat. I don't understand it, but either way, Prince Fielder, nice power. He's doing well so far this year. Moving on to second base here, where this is another spot where I'm going to be trying to find some value. Joe Panic, probably going to be one of my higher-owned players, assuming he's batting second again. In Coors Field, 2.8K. Pagan and Posey behind him. I mean, Eddie Butler has been struggling. He's been walking in too many batters. All the factors there for a nice cheap value play there for Joe Panic.
Absolutely. He's my favorite value play for sure. Alex Guerrero, if he's in the lineup again, you can't like Petco Park, but you can like a sub $3,000 price point and making a lot of contact, hitting for a lot of power. So He looks pretty good to me. Another name that I like as second base, probably going to be my highest owned second baseman, is $3,100 Jason Kipnis. Leadoff hitter, left-handed again, so I'm not 100% sold on Green having lefties figured out just yet. So I'm going to grab some $3,100 shares of Jason Kipnis, get a leadoff hitter in a ballpark that ever so slightly amplifies run scoring to left-handed batters, and hope that Kipnis gets on and some of the lefties behind him drive him in, and that'll pay for a $3,100 player.
Yeah, I like that as well. One other guy at 3,100, and you should know about him if you've been playing DFS over the past week. Devin Travis, kind of taking the DFS world by storm right now. He's been hot. He's been batting second with Bautista out of lineup. Doesn't look like Bautista will be back again today, so I'm going to continue to ride that hot streak right there. And he's going to be pretty heavily owned. So if you're playing a bunch of GPP teams and you don't have some exposure, he has a big game, that's going to hurt you pretty bad at second, which isn't a particularly great position today. I mean, it's not a bad one, but I think that's about my cutoff there today with the big pitching is at 3,100. So
Yep.
One other guy that you had mentioned before the show I want to go ahead and touch on just real quick is Daniel Murphy at $2,900.
Yes.
Getting the park upgrade, had a great game yesterday. Pineda, we know, tough against lefties and righties last year, but not particularly good at keeping the ball on the ground. So definitely some run scoring upside in that tiny ballpark today. So I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, he hits fifth, so he's in that ever important 1 through 5 spot in the lineup. If you can get one of those top 5 lineup spots, you're golden compared to your peers.
Yeah, I mean, he came up yesterday with the bases loaded twice. He only delivered once, but it was a 3-run double. So just keep that in mind. Perfect lineup spot for him at a cheap price tag. Moving over to third base, where Chris Bryant, if you haven't heard of him, Chris Bryant's pretty good. We're still waiting on Chris Bryant to hit his first home run, but what better park for it to happen in than Great American today against Mike Leake, who, yes, he's a ground ball pitcher, but as we know, when he's off his game, line drives sprayed all over the field. I've seen this a million times being a Reds fan. I mean, I'm not going out of my way necessarily to stack against him, but he's definitely very beatable, especially in this park.
Yeah, and I mean, right-handed power plays at Great American, so I like Bryant a bit. The guy that I expect to be the most heavily owned, and I don't actually think is going to be terribly close, is Josh Donaldson. 4,300, he gets a lefty. He's hitting the ball really hard right now. People love to chase hot streaks, but in this case, he also has that track record of success against lefties, so he's going to be heavily owned. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to go $600 cheaper, and I'm going to go back to Great American Ballpark, and I'm going to get me some Todd Frazier against John Lester. I'm going to be hooking him and Votto on some teams, and if Lester's not right, Votto's going to rip that double. Then you're going to get Frazier up there, and he's going to find the seats, and you're going to be throwing your hands in the air in excitement. Yeah. I guess waving them like you just don't care. Is that what people do these days?
like the guys outside of the auto parts or auto sales places.
Exactly. So we got some auto sales, like blow up inflatable things going on when Todd Frazier goes deep tonight. Just remember that. Have that imagery in your head. But I really like Frazier at 3,700. Big power, really good against left-handed pitching. So the only other name that I'm going to throw out there is a cheap name, and then I'll let you have the floor, and that's $3,300 David Freese against a lefty. Like I said, I want to pick on Wandy a little bit. I think Freese is the perfect third base partner for King Felix. 3,300, you're not sacrificing a lot of upside since he is still hammering left-handed pitching at this point in his career, and has a favorable lineup spot. Going to save a little bit of money off of the top options, which is crucial at this point. You have to save it somewhere. This isn't a bad place to do it because you're not sacrificing that much with the bat.
Yeah, and batting cleanup in that Angels lineup is certainly a great place to be, like you mentioned. So, like that. And the guy I'm going to throw out here who, one of my favorite young players, but he's finally getting it going, thank God. $3,200, Manny Machado. Love him or hate him. I like the spot for him a lot tonight. Finally getting it going. And this is not to chase his 2 home runs last night. I'm obviously not expecting that. But Rick Porcello has not been good so far. ERA of nearly 7 on the season. And Machado, 4 hits in his last 2 games. Scored a couple runs, obviously, with those home runs. Swiped a bag a couple days ago. He's finally starting to get it going. This Baltimore offense, one of the better in the league so far this season. And I'm gonna be having quite a bit of Manny Machado today at 3,200.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with Machado is strikeout rate's ever so slightly up, but he's walking a lot more. I like the plate discipline numbers, and he's a guy who the scouts have loved for years. Is still young and has produced at a high rate at such a young age. At some point, it's really going to go on, and we may be seeing the light going on at this point. So, price to own, I'll say that much. 3,200 is a great price point for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. And elsewhere at third base, one other guy I want to touch on. If you're going cheap, he's hitting the ball well. He's been batting second ahead of Stanton. If you're not a believer in Jordan Zimmerman, which I am not right now, he's, like you mentioned, his velocity's down. He just doesn't look good. Martin Prado at $2,800 makes for a nice cheap play as well.
Yeah, I mean, with Zimmerman's velocity down and his struggles missing bats this year, I mean, that's a bad combination against the lineup with Giancarlo Stanton and Martin Prado and some guys that can really hit the ball a little bit. If that velocity doesn't magically come back here and he's not as sharp and he's not missing bats, that's a recipe for disaster. And grabbing Prado in his lineup spot is a pretty nifty move as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to shortstop, where makes me want to throw up today, despite all these games. Just not a good position at all today. I mean, I know often guys like to punt at shortstop. I'm a big fan of that, especially in cash games. I go with the guy who has the best lineup spot and in a fine position. So obviously that remains to be seen today. But if you want some cheap options here, Freddie Galvis, he's been hitting either second or eighth most days, which is we've seen this before. It's the Kevin Kiermaier effect, and he's nowhere near Kevin Kiermaier. Sorry, Kevin. Didn't mean to bring you into this. But either way, Freddie Galvis, if he ends up hitting second, we've seen Alex Wood struggle a lot this season. Doesn't look like himself. He looks like bad Alex Wood that got demoted to the bullpen before. So at $2,400, I don't mind Galvis if he's got a nice lineup spot. Chris Owings is a guy who's really heating up, and he's got the nice ballpark behind him there in Chase Field. And he doesn't have a great matchup, but at $2,700, he's had a nice lineup spot as well. Who else are you looking at here at short?
I'm looking at one name that has a bad lineup spot, but has 2 homers, 2 stolen bases, and has hammered lefties in the minors, hammered lefties so far in the big leagues. That's Marcus Semien of the Oakland A's. Not a great matchup with Dallas Keuchel, but for $3,000, I would say he's probably my high price point option if I'm going to go there. Not going to own a lot of shares of him, might grab a few shares of him. Johnny Peralta at $2,800 against Matt Garza. Miller Park, really good for hitting home runs in. Peralta typically hits 5th, so he's got a good lineup spot. Really like him at $2,800, even though it's a righty-righty matchup. Asdrubal Cabrera has basically become my default punt at shortstop. $2,500, hitting 3rd for the Tampa Bay Rays. And as we know with R.A. Dickey, if that knuckleball's not knuckling, pretty hittable, and I'll take the number 3 hitter for the Rays for $2,500.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, that's definitely a price point ends lineup position play, but I mean, you can't fault it. It's hard to find a guy in that good of a spot. So, big fan there. Now, moving on here to the outfield, Corey Dickerson, as we know, at home against a righty. Cue the same old song we always hear. He's going to be a popular play, of course, and that huge total. But Coors Field hasn't exactly been the greatest place to stack over the last few days, and I'm not saying to avoid it tonight, but Chris Heston hasn't been bad. 62% ground ball rate so far this year, and that's not to say I won't be getting some Dickerson, because you know I will. But there's some other swerves here that'll be lower owns here with some similar upside. Guys like Giancarlo Stanton. Notice I'm already trying to pick on Jordan Zimmerman, and Stan's finally kind of locked in. Homered yesterday. He's starting to get it going on the season now. He's got home runs in now 4 of his last 7 games. So finally, from that early season slump, he's starting to look like the Giancarlo Stanton we know. And I mean, the guy can crush anybody. So I'll be getting myself some exposure there as a contrarian play.
Yeah, diminished velocity is going to do Jordan Zimmerman no favors against Giancarlo Stanton. I'll toss out another name of a guy who's hitting the ball a long way. If you haven't seen Steven Souza's highlight reel thus far this year, these are some moon shots. As I noted with Dickey, if that knuckleball's not knuckling, it becomes a cookie. And Steven Souza, we might have to start calling him Cookie Monster here pretty soon, because he is absolutely hammering cookies that are fed to him down the middle. And I'm looking for another highlight reel home run from him tonight. I don't like a lot of the top names. I mean, I'm with you on Dickerson, but the price points just don't line up with the matchups. So I'm digging a little deeper. I like $3,800 Michael Brantley a lot. Again, another lefty. This one hitting 3rd for the Indians against Shane Green. If you think Green's going to struggle with lefties, what better guy to get than the number 3 hitter who offers some speed, offers some power, and makes a ton of contact. Digging a little bit below him, $3,400 Angel Pagan at Coors Field. Gotta like him, hitting third for the Giants, high betting total. As you've already mentioned, Eddie Butler struggles with the walks. If you're grabbing Panic, maybe hook Panic and Pagan together. Try and get both of those guys some points in your GPPs. And beyond that, maybe $2,800 Travis Snyder is a guy that I've got in mind. Hasn't really demonstrated the power that I've expected just yet, but plate discipline's been really good. Strikeout rate hasn't been bad. Great lineup spot at home where we know left-handed power plays really well at Camden Yards. And again, more exposure to Rick Porcello, who was good against lefties last year, but has a track record that says otherwise. So I'm going to grab some Travis Snyder for 2,800. And why don't you take another name from that game that you suggested, depending on lineup spot?
Alejandro De Aza, if he's back in the leadoff spot, which he typically is when he's in the lineup, he's got a really nice price tag today at $2,800. So obviously a leadoff hitter there. Anytime you get a leadoff hitter with some power and some speed at that price, you got to love that. Gregory Polanco at Chase Field at $3,400. He's really starting to get it going. He's got a nice price tag as well. Seth Smith has been leading off. We know he likes to hit righties, can't touch lefties, so you're concerned a little bit that maybe lose his last at bat getting platooned out, as he does often. But $2,300 for their guy who should be leading off. And I mean, it's not an ideal matchup against Phil Hughes, but Phil Hughes is a contact pitcher, so gonna have opportunity to hit the ball. And I mean, he's not going to hurt you much at that price. A nice guy to get some salary, get yourself some, his pitcher actually, and Felix Hernandez. And one other guy I want to mention here, and this is assuming that he's batting second again, and it's Elian Herrera at $2,400. Obviously, you're not going to expect him to hit a grand slam like he did against the Reds a couple days ago in his first appearance. But I mean, you got a guy batting second ahead of Ryan Braun and these other big bats. Yes, they're cold, but he should be low owned. He is really cheap. And like we said a million times, we'll say it one more. You need to get some cheap plays, so I don't mind slotting him in there either.
Yep, and I mean, that's the key here. You have to understand that if you're in a roster, King Felix, you can't go out and grab Corey Dickerson and all these other stud hitters around the diamond. You're going to have to sacrifice some salary, get some guys in favorable lineup spots, and hope that a couple of them deliver. I mean, you get a couple knocks from Seth Smith, and all of a sudden, 2,300 plus the studly performance you're going to get from King Felix, and you're already ahead of the curve. Then you just need your other bats to perform at a decent level, and you're just fine. And you'll be cashing, and you'll be winning money, and you'll be Scrooge McDucking it by the end of the night, and we'll be all happy there.
Yep, we'll be making it rain with coins with you guys all night long. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. That's going to finish things up for us on the FanDuel Punch-Out. Follow us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Check out all of our great content for tonight's huge slate at dailyfantasycafe.com. We'll see you guys tomorrow.